I am a clockmaker, and I will tell you a secret. Time doesn't heal everything. It merely waits. It waits for the gears to align, for the pendulum to swing back, and for the minute hand to point precisely where justice needs to be served. For me, that moment arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. A young man, arrogant and careless, walked into my quiet little shop and placed a broken timepiece on my velvet mat. It was a beautiful, unique chronograph. I picked it up, my old, scarred fingers brushing the cool, etched gold. And then I saw it. 3 tiny interlocking initials carved years ago by a proud father for his son. In that instant, the world stopped spinning. The gentle tick-tock of 1,000 clocks in my shop was replaced by the frantic, deafening drumbeat of my own heart. That watch belonged to my son, my only boy, taken from me 20 years ago by a man who walked free. And the boy standing before me was the killer's son. That Tuesday, my retirement ended. I had one final, crucial repair to make, a repair that would finally force time to deliver its inevitable, chilling truth. Hello, everyone. I am an old man, and most days I feel every one of my 70-plus years. I live in a quiet, unassuming town now, a place where people rely on me for one thing: fixing what is broken. My trade, clockmaking, is one of patience, of seeing the tiny, essential mechanism that holds everything together. But for 20 years, the greatest, most important thing in my life, my son, remained fundamentally, brutally broken. The man who destroyed my life was never held accountable. He just moved on. And I was left here, a ghost in my own shop. If you've ever felt that consuming, desperate desire for justice when the world tells you to move on, if you understand the silent rage of a powerless father, or if you simply believe that karma is a force that cannot be defied forever, please take a moment. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and settle in. This is my true story. This is the story of how a retired clockmaker played the longest game of his life to prove that time and truth will always catch up. Let's begin. I wasn't always a repairman for quaint tourist clocks. 40 years ago, I ran a high-end atelier in the city. My specialty was complicated movements, tourbillons, perpetual calendars, mechanisms that only the masters dared to touch. My life was defined by precision and purpose. And then there was my son. He was sunshine and chaos all wrapped up in a teenage frame. I had made him a watch for his 18th birthday, a beautiful, Swiss-made chronograph. He wasn't interested in the business, but he loved that watch. It was a rainy night. He was driving home from college. A drunk driver, a local industrialist, ran a red light. My son was gone instantly. The driver, rich and connected, had the best lawyers. They spun a tale of faulty traffic signals and mechanical failure. He got 6 months probation. 6 months for extinguishing my light. That event didn't just break my heart, it shattered my faith in the order of the world. A clockmaker relies on order, on predictable movements. But justice, I learned, was neither orderly nor predictable. I sold the big shop. I moved here, to this quiet town, and opened a small repair counter. I spent my days hunched over broken springs and dusty brass, seeking comfort in the mechanical perfection the real world lacked. I was numb. My life was suspended in that instant 20 years ago, waiting for a bell that would never chime. 2 decades passed. The industrialist was still around, richer, louder, and seemingly untouchable. His son was his carbon copy, entitled, dismissive, and with that same smug glint in his eye. I saw them occasionally, the father waving an easy, dismissive hand at the world. The day the young man walked into my shop, I was polishing a carriage clock. He didn't introduce himself. He just tossed a heavy leather pouch onto the counter. "This old thing stopped working," he said, bored. "My father gave it to me. Fix it." I picked it up. It was heavy, gold-cased, and clearly expensive. As I flipped it over to examine the movement, my thumb brushed against the back. The metal was worn, but clear, just below the winding crown. T.S. My son's initials. The watch I had made for him was clearly in the hands of the killer's son. My hands started to shake, a tremor that ran right up my arm and settled in my throat. I looked at the young man, his clean clothes, his easy indifference. He didn't even know what he possessed. He wore my son's legacy like a cheap fashion accessory. A wave of heat rushed over me. Not grief, but a sudden, blinding clarity. This wasn't just my son's watch. This was a direct line back to that rainy night. This was the universe handing me the very tool I needed. I kept my voice steady, professional. "It's a very fine piece," I said, my words tasting like ash. "But the balance wheel is severely damaged. It will take time, weeks, maybe months, to source a replacement of this quality." The young man barely shrugged. "Fine, send the bill to my father." He scribbled an address on a slip of paper and walked out, already on his phone. He didn't even look back. In that moment, I shed the skin of the grieving, retired clockmaker. I became an operative. My grief, frozen for 20 years, now fueled a meticulous, ice-cold resolve. My goal was no longer to fix the watch. My goal was to fix the injustice. And I realized this watch was only the bait. I knew the story. I'd read every police report, every court transcript. The crucial missing piece was a confession. The father had always maintained that his watch, the one he was supposedly wearing that night, was working fine, and that he was driving the speed limit. But my son's watch? If the killer was wearing my son's watch, the story changed entirely. Why would the killer possess the victim's property? I needed something more. I needed a mechanism for truth. I didn't actually repair the chronograph. I used it as a cover for my true project. I told the young man that the repair was complicated, that it required specialized, sensitive testing. I needed time, and I took it. Months. I took an antique regulator clock I kept in my back room, a massive, imposing piece, 6 feet tall, with a loud, authoritative chime that struck once on the hour. I meticulously dismantled the entire clockwork. I replaced the original, simple gong mechanism with a complex, hidden trigger. The goal. At the stroke of midnight, the clock would activate a secondary, concealed device. My source came from a deep, desperate place. Over the years, I'd heard whispers in this small town. The industrialist, when drunk, would occasionally boast about the slick lawyer trick that saved him. One of my regulars, a bartender, mentioned that the father, decades ago, kept a diary, a rambling confession, dictated onto an old reel-to-reel tape, just one copy. He kept it in a hidden compartment in the house's foundation, a detail he drunkenly revealed years ago. The foundation, the one thing even a self-made man never changes. I crafted a miniature, ultra-precise digital trigger, wired directly into the regulator's striking mechanism. When the clock struck 12, a specific frequency would be emitted. I needed to get that clock into the killer's home, near the hiding spot. I called the industrialist himself, using the contact information his son had left. Sir, your son's watch repair is complete. However, due to its age and the complexity of the damage, it requires final calibration against a master chronometer. This must be done in situ due to local magnetic interference. I need to bring my antique regulator to your home for 48 hours. A huge clock? To fix a watch? That's ridiculous, old man. Just send me the watch. Sir, this watch is valued at over $40,000. I guarantee its accuracy only with this final step. Any deviation, and I will be forced to buy you a new watch, and I assure you, it will be better than the one you currently own. The mention of the high cost and the veiled threat of having to pay for a mistake got his attention. He agreed. He couldn't be bothered with the logistics. Arrogance is a deadly flaw. 2 days later, I delivered the towering regulator clock to his sprawling mansion. I noted the precise location of the hidden compartment just as the bartender had described. The industrialist merely waved me into his main study, a massive room of dark wood and trophies. I positioned the regulator clock carefully, the minute hand already sweeping toward the witching hour. Under the pretense of testing the local interference, I discreetly placed a tiny, specialized receiver transmitter inside the room's plaster molding. This device was designed to catch the unique frequency and, crucially, transmit the audio. I left the clock and the bait watch sitting on the study desk. Before I left the property, I made a detour. I contacted the detective who handled my son's case 20 years ago, a man who always believed the industrialist was guilty but lacked the evidence. I told him about the watch, the initials, and the suspicion of a hidden confession. I told him where to listen. I just told him to be ready to act at midnight. I sat in my parked car 2 blocks from the estate. The moon was high. The hour approached. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white and aching. 20 years of numbness had been replaced by a singular, focused intensity. I felt sick, terrified, but also strangely free. I could hear the father's voice, transmitted through the tiny receiver in my pocket, slurring, agitated. He was alone, staring at the watch. He was rambling to himself. The sight of the watch, my son's watch, had clearly unsettled him. "Stupid old man and his clock," he muttered. "Why did he have to bring that piece of junk here? 20 years ago, 6 months, that's all they got. They had nothing. Nothing, because I got rid of the car and the evidence." I held my breath. It was almost time. The sound of the clock's deep, resonant chime cut through the silence. 12 times. On the 12th chime, a subtle, almost imperceptible clicking sound transmitted through my receiver, followed by a low, mechanical hum. The frequency had been sent. The trigger had been pulled. The receiver in my pocket flared to life, not with the father's rambling, but with a crackling, distant sound. The old tape recorder voice, deep and slurred, began. "It wasn't the lights. It was me. I was drunk. I ran the lights straight through. And that boy, he went right under the wheels. I took his watch, didn't want the police finding it on me, tucked it away. God forgive me. The confession is in the foundation. No one will ever find it." Point A. It was his voice, younger, terrified, drunk, on the old reel-to-reel tape, now activated by the clock's internal trigger. Point B. The father in the study screamed, a high, panicked sound that was completely unlike his usual arrogance. "What is that? Stop! Stop it!" He must have heard the sound coming from the wall, from the hidden compartment. He knew. He rushed toward the wall, but it was too late. In the distance, I heard the sound I had waited 20 years for. Sirens, loud, authoritative, and getting closer fast. The police, alerted to the imminent confession, had moved in. I lowered my window. The cool night air hit my face. I closed my eyes and let out a shuddering breath. I didn't feel triumph. I felt a devastating, absolute relief. The mechanism of justice, delayed by 2 decades, had finally completed its cycle. Time had told the truth. They took the industrialist in that night. The taped confession was indisputable, combined with the presence of my son's watch in his home. The original case was reopened, the lawyers were silenced, and the truth, hidden in the dark, was dragged into the light. I didn't get my son back. That wound will never close. But I reclaimed something far more vital, the order of the world. I learned that you cannot rush justice. You can't force the hands of fate. But you can be patient. You can be meticulous. You can be the silent, unseen mechanism that forces the final chime. I am just a clockmaker. I fix broken things. And the greatest repair job I ever took was on the broken moral order of this world. The world is like a very complex, very old clock. Most people only pay attention to the hands, the surface. But the real power is in the balance wheel, the escapement, the tiny, unseen details. Be the one who understands the mechanisms, not just the display. Be the one who knows that the long silence is not an absence of sound, but merely the time between the chimes. And the chime of justice, once set, is inevitable. If this story of the longest game and the most precise revenge resonated with you, I ask you one final time, smash that like button and subscribe. Your support helps bring more real-life stories of justice served. I want to know what you think. Do you believe that time always reveals the truth? Or does it require a patient hand to move the pieces? Tell me in the comments below, what is the most satisfying justice you've ever witnessed, even if it was delayed?